All right, this is a listen to Tony with me, Anthony Olensky, a podcast just for me just to explore different ideas, people, and see where the conversation takes us. Today's guest is Paulus. He may be kind of learned to do it. Paulus the penis. How do you say it?
Paulius Lapienis.
All right, Paulus the penis.
Close
Apologies.
enough.
Yeah, close enough. Man, yeah. So you're like you're a young gun who's an expert or like trying to be an expert in computational neuroscience. Um,
Yep, that's
but
pretty accurate.
yeah, what is computational neuroscience?
Okay, so neuroscience is the study of the nervous system, and computational neuroscience is the study of the nervous system using mathematical models and computer simulations.
Is there any other way to study neuroscience?
Absolutely. So you could, for example, employ like biotech techniques, like study the way neurons behave using, I don't know, pigments maybe or something. I mean, there are other ways. One of the first experiments in neuroscience was just using electrodes and seeing what type of signal the neuron gives back. So you give it some input and then see the output.
Okay. Why why computational neuroscience?
Mm, I mean, the whole world is moving slowly towards modeling, and I feel like to understand the nervous system, we'll definitely need to employ computer models. So I thought that made the most sense.
If you had to paint it for, a person who is completely outside of this world, because I understood the explanation you gave,
Hmm.
but why would you be excited about this in the first place?
Mm, well, for
In
me,
layman's terms,
yeah. So I was always amazed by, um, but basically. Like uploading human consciousness somewhere. So I thought this was like the made the most sense basically. Like I'm amazed by the human ability, and I feel like moving forward, you know how humans interact with technology uh, and how technology interacts with humans. If we think of about AI, it should be a big focus.
Actually, I think I want to dive into this a little bit more. Can you program consciousness? What is consciousness even? Let's start there.
Yeah, that's a very philosophical question that definitely not my expertise, but um, I mean, consciousness, yeah, I can't say what consciousness is, but what I can say is that the like our whole world is sort of based on it's a simple complex system. So you have very simple dynamics at the lowest level, but because there's just so many of them happening at the same time, you there emerges a complex behavior. So yeah, I feel like at the low level the system is very simple. It's just we can't really get to that low level as of yet.
And what would be the ideal end state?
What do you mean?
By like just certain fields, right, have these milestones they try to achieve in terms of, say, artificial intelligence. If you ask someone on the street, they would say, well, there is a sentient machine that I could hang out with slash employ, etc., etc. What is computational neuroscience trying to achieve?
Mm, so I think one of the big pushes in the field is for a digital twin. So you basically have a digital copy of yourself online. So I feel like
What?
that's one of the big pushes in the field, but obviously we're very far away from that.
It's like bots.
Yeah, so like think a Tony bot. So everything Tony knows and Tony does and the way Tony speaks, but in your computer.
Is that related to the metaverse? Like, why would you even do it? You know, like, do you have like an additional identity? Say, like, you die, we leave the studio, you get hit by a car, and then there is Paulus still out there somewhere on the dark web, and like, can you are they going to be related? Like, do you kind of transition yourself to your digital self once your physical self is dead?
Mm, I mean, so different people obviously have different agendas, but in science, most things are done because just to see if we can do it, basically. Like, I don't know, when Einstein was doing his theories, he wasn't thinking of, oh my God, I want to create an atomic bomb, or oh my God, I want, a power plant, He was just thinking, can I do this actually?
Yeah.
So our job as a scientist is not to decide how the tech is going to be used. It's just, is the tech possible?
And why do you want to be part of it? Because you could, you're young, you could use your brain for multiple things. Why dedicate yourself? Up until now, you might decide in a few years you want to become a fireman or a pro esports uh, gamer. But
I mean, for me, it was just the coolest available option, basically. So when I was choosing, what do I do after school? This was
high
the
school,
yeah. So after high school, what do
you
I
went to a
do?
Jesuit high school, right?
Yeah, I went to
How
a
was that? Did that
Jesuit.
influence kind of your choices by being
No,
in
no,
a
no.
religious setting while
No, no,
growing
no,
up?
no, no, no. It's I mean you know,
They got a
uh,
bad rep. Like, what does it mean to go to Jesuit? Or some of them like bad rep. I mean, some people are very fond of them, but what does it even mean to be at a Jesuit high school? Is it special?
at least where I went, it wasn't too special. Like we did have a mass once per week, where the whole school attended, but it was sort of just a thing you did. I know there were very religious people there. I know, but most were not very religious or not religious at all. It was just more like it's one of the best high schools available in the city, so that's why a lot of people want to go there.
Mm.
Not mostly not for religious reasons. Nobody's going into Jesuit high school being like, oh yes, I'm going there because I'm extremely religious.
Why do you think they're so good? Is there some link between religion and how they set up the whole educational system in their school?
No, I think it's just basically religious institutions focused on education the most in the early days, and now it's just sort of the continuation of that.
Compounding on their experience.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like it's just when you start early, you get the first movers advantage, and then after that it's just network effects. Yeah, very very startup-y.
Yeah, well, we were talking about yeah, the idea of you starting something later on in conversation. But I'm asking these questions about Jesuits and religion, and because I think it's related to you mentioned consciousness
Hmm.
and in the brain, and you kind of choosing the coolest thing out there.
Hmm.
I mean, arguably, if you ask someone who's leaving high school now, what's the coolest thing you could do? They would probably say, or I mean, they could say a YouTuber or a computer scientist, or I mean, there are so many different things you could do that are subjectively extremely cool.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I mean it's
Certainly, I
for
didn't think
every.
about becoming a computational neuroscientist. So why? Like, if you
No, it's
do you have
just
like a
for
decision
every
tree?
person. I think it's for every person different. Like what does he value? So I always valued. I was always interested in science, and I knew that I wanted to pursue this after high school and see how it's done there. And yeah, this was just. I didn't want to leave the country yet, so I looked for options inside of the country, basically, and yeah, this.
Lithuania.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't Lithuania big in computational neuroscience?
Mm, so there are some. So Lithuania is pretty big on AI/ML, lasers, and like computational neuroscience and just neuroscience in general is slowly emerging. But we do have some very involved players, or at least like some groups trying to go big in the field.
Mm. And when you got into computational neuroscience, what were the first like what was the first semester about? Like what are the first classes like? Did they give you like a brain of a monkey or something? You dabble in it, try to learn how the brain
No, no,
functions, and then
no.
you transition that to actually trying to code something. That
No, it was just math. It was like an engineering topics. So you had it's actually like 50-50. So you have 50% engineering topics, just base engineering topics like maths, physics, chemistry, biology. And then you have the other half that is sort of more psychology related. So yeah, you have like the base psychology, you have behavioral psychology. Yeah, so it's just a big mix.
and how do you apply like in it because I assume you had 3 years before you wrote your thesis, right? Your bachelor's thesis, or 4 years.
Hmm.
I don't know what the system is like.
Yeah, I started writing it way sooner, but yes, you usually start writing it after the third year.
What did you decide to delve into?
So I did my bachelor's on um, neural mass models. So my bachelor's was basically implementing an already available neural mass model, evaluating its performance, and then performing large scale brain simulations with it. Um, yeah.
What is the argument for like for that? Or like what were you trying to argue? And what was like the biggest counter argument to whatever you were trying to argue in your thesis? Like what was the thesis about? Like
So the thesis was so there was this model. I mean, I called it Yusuf et al. Because it's just a paper, and in the paper they published the model, and my argument was the model was pretty bad, and I wanted to basically
what was
prove.
it?
So it was just a neural mass model, so it simulated the how the basal ganglia interact with the cortex.
Okay.
um, so yeah, so I basically said that the um, yeah, I tried to prove that the model was, because it's a published model. So I tried to prove that the model was, well, basically just bad, and yeah, that was the whole thesis.
How do
And
you prove that?
so you look at what type of dynamics does the model capture. You look at how the model was constructed. You look at what happens when you change different parameters. You look at uh, the space in which or the parameter space in which the model operates. So yeah.
And then you have a paper and you just submit it saying these guys are full of shit. And did you actually prove them wrong or
Well, I mean, I think I did, but obviously there are so many papers out, and there are a lot of bad ones. So in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it matters too much.
is it also political in the
No, well,
academic sphere where there is some level of ego and also just like a crude experience where you're some professor who has, I guess, much to lose if some kid from Lithuania proves them wrong.
mm,
Therefore, like maybe it's not worth disproving that person just not to kick up a fuss in the field.
um, so when I did, I didn't focus too much on politics, but there is just in general in science there is a big lack of papers that focus on proving or disproving or reproducing results, basically. And there's just I think there's a lot of transparency issues in general in academia.
Hmm. Why or
I don't know. I guess those type of papers just don't get as many rewards as like new types of papers. So people try to push out a lot of new
mm,
papers, but then basically nobody's focusing on validating the results of the old papers, because there's just no reward in it. Basically, there are some initiatives happening now, but they're very slow, and I really hope that they pick up, because I feel like that's one of the worst things in academia is you having to sift through like thousands and thousands of papers and basically identifying which ones are good, which ones are bad, and which ones are usable.
Yeah. Could you? I guess like my takeaway from this is that there's no incentive for someone to look through other people's work. It's better to ship something new, and that's gonna build some excitement and hype around that person.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
but could you use, or when you're saying new initiatives, are you talking about, for example, AI analyzing the different paperwork that's coming out and
No, no, no. I just mean like monetary initiatives. So you have like funds that reward people for result reproduction, for example,
mm,
and paper analysis. And this is especially becoming popular in computer science and related fields, where basically you have like computer models. So it's beginning to get incentivized for people to upload the code they used for the paper, and then other people running the code, playing with the code, reproducing results, and seeing if everything's good.
got it. Now, when you did submit that paper, or when you're working on that paper, I assume that in such a field which is very nascent still, you want to have someone backing you, or you need to find. Was there some professor um, who really inspired you or guided you to pick that thing, or were you completely independent? And
Yeah, so this
because I imagine, like, just like these scientists, and there's always in the movies and whatnot, there's always this like Batman and Robin kind of vibe. Like, you need to learn from someone because it's such a hard and niche field. Was there someone like that for you, or was it mainly you just figured it out over YouTube?
no, 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 no. Yeah, so exactly. So I had a professor who is very invested in the field, and she's running like a lab just purely focused on this computational neuroscience, and she's very involved in the Human Brain Project. At this point, it's already towards the ending stages, but she was very involved there. So I had a lot of like I learned a lot from her, but even more from other institutions that are from the project. So I did like an internship in Marseille, France, in
Ooh.
neuroscience institute, and yeah, that's where I learned the most, I feel like, about the field. Like that's what gave me the initial push.
What is the Human Brain Project?
Yeah, so the Human Brain Project is basically a European initiative. It's like a $1 billion European project focused on
Big money.
oh yeah, big money, focused on analyzing the human brain, and they have these different work packages, each with their own set of objectives they try to achieve until the end of the project. And each one of these work packages is ran by like a European institute. So some were ran in France, some were ran in northern universities. But yeah, it's a super massive project. I was just very very small part in a very very big project.
What part did you play?
Yeah, so I worked on work package 3, and I worked on large scale brain simulations for Parkinson disease.
Okay. What does the $1 billion give us in the end? What's the
So there are a bunch of different outcomes from the project. So you have some initiatives that focus on data sharing, data transparency, ease of using data. You have other outcomes that try to focus on, for example, there's one group that focuses on very detailed mappings of the brain. So they took a brain and they sliced it like basically at
human
a
brain?
Yeah, so they took a full human brain, and then they sliced it based on basically like in very 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 small slices, and then they had extremely good resolution and done this across the whole brain. So it's a lot of, basically it's a lot of data. So you have like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of terabytes of just pictures of the human brain. So one group focused on that. The group I worked with, Victor Yirsa, he focused on basically uh, easing the simulation, so easing large scale brain simulations, making them more accessible
Mm.
to research institutions, and also basically providing value with them. So like performing clinical trials that actually lead to some um, real world outcomes.
For example.
So the main focus was on improving the deep brain stimulation electrode placement in the brain.
What does that even mean?
Yeah, so deep.
Sorry.
Okay, so that's a bit of a tangent, but deep brain stimulation is a procedure where you try to reduce
Deep
tremors.
brain, you saying?
Yeah, deep brain,
Okay, like DE or
deep,
DEEP? Okay,
deep. Yeah, just the word deep.
yeah.
So so it's basically a procedure where you try to reduce tremors in patients that are non-responsive to drug treatments in neurodegenerative diseases. So neurodegenerative meaning diseases where neurons are physically dying inside of the brain. Um, so basically, the procedure goes, you just take electrodes, you insert them into the brain, and up until now, it was done. You just have one pre-selected location that works based on clinical studies, but it doesn't work 100% of the time. So procedure, depending on where you look, it's 50% to 70% as it has a 50 to 70% success rate, or basically like 50 to 30% of patients are just non-responsive, so they still have the tremors. So our goal was to improve the placement of those electrodes, because yeah, the hypothesis was that that basically each patient has a different brain structure, so the same electrode location in the brain wouldn't work for all of the patients.
Hmm. I'm also wondering, first, like, did you prove the hypothesis?
Yeah, so one of the ways to prove it was basically taking pictures of the brain and then digitizing the brain structure, and then just running like simple experiments of basically, are we able to predict if the patient is going to be responsive or non-responsive based on the brain structure.
Okay, and just a definition question: deep brain. What is a deep brain?
So so deep brain is basically, I mean, it's pretty, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. So it's not on the surface, it's
Right, so
deep in the
whatever is
brain.
inside,
Yeah,
like,
so whatever is inside, exactly.
I mean, because I don't know what's on the surface, like it's hidden
So
behind my skull, like so.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's just not the surface of the brain, but inside, so deep.
What do you do during this, like an internship like this? Like, what's the day to day? You come in, you have a cup of coffee, you sit down, and you just run some tests. You know what I mean? Like, cause
Yeah, so my day to day there was, yeah, just waking up, going to the lab, and then consulting. Okay, what's the next steps? Getting some resources to learn from, having some guidance if I have some questions I can always ask, basically, and yeah, then just working on whatever I was working on.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like it's a big project. How
Yeah.
do you keep yourself and your team aligned on the direction, and also just like you, I don't know if you think that or you like, but I'm how I just I guess operate in general in life, like these little milestones, like kind of okay, I did this and this today, like boom, done, move on, like you hit certain KPIs. Do you do you have that in the world of academia, or you got 3 months, you know you're gonna be there for 3 months, you want to have some outcome, but probably not gonna reach it in 3 months. You're gonna learn a bunch of cool shit, but that's
Mm.
about it. Or
No, what I was doing, it was more learning. So I mean, it was obvious that this is possible to do. So yeah, I had outcomes. My outcome was basically, so you remember that model we talked about, I did my bachelor's on. So that was
yeah,
basically implementing that model into the framework. So the virtual brain framework, which we use for the large scale brain simulations. So that was the goal and the outcome.
virtual brain framework is basically mapping your brain on a computer, and
So the virtual brain framework is just like a tool that eases large scale brain simulations. So you basically, how you use the tool is you input the brain structure, you input the neural mass models, and then the tool does everything else. So it does all of the simulations. Of course, there's a lot of fine tuning you do in between. So like what type of um, um, what type of integrator do you use? How do you simulate? Where do you put the electrodes? How do you um, how do you exchange the signals between different brain areas? And yeah, there's a lot of parameters, but it does ease the, especially the visualization tasks.
yeah, but it's run on a computer. It's like it's a program. It's not like you have some like big like some virtual. I don't know how you do even describe it, or when you say virtual brain, it's like maybe you have something behind like a glass, like a lab grown massive brain that you
No,
just
no, no, no. Yeah, it's just, yeah, exactly. You just run it on your computer. It's to put it bluntly, it's a Python library. Um,
okay.
but you also have
I could use it if I wanted to. I could download it off the net.
yeah, 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 you can. Yeah, it's open source, freely available.
And so if I would download it, I can if I had the capability to play around with it, I would just like put in some commands and it would test for
Yeah,
me.
yeah,
What
exactly.
would be like a good example of what I could do with it? Like even at home, like what would you do with a virtual brain simulator?
Mm, so, for example, what you could do, so by default, the tool has already some, we call them connectomes. So basically, like how different brain areas are connected with each other, that's a connectome. So you have a bunch of these connectomes. They're basically just matrices. So you have a matrix of brain areas, and then the the nodes in the matrix represent the weight, so how the areas are connected between each other. So yeah, so you have those. You also have a lot of neural mass models implemented, so you could just run the simulations. And for example, I don't know, let's say uh, you would input some sort of a signal into one brain area, and then you could, for example, simulate how does the signal propagate through the whole brain.
Okay, got it. Maybe I'll try it one afternoon. So you got your bachelor's. You are you know what's going on, or like you have some sense of okay, computational neuroscience. Been in this field for a few years now. What do you do? Like, you obviously didn't stay in academia. So what was the I guess the next step? And
Yeah, so for me, so what I didn't like in academia was a very rigid structure, to where basically if you're well, if you don't have a bachelor's, you basically cannot exist in academia. It's a miracle that I managed to get my hands on working on anything in general. Like if you ask bachelor students, they usually don't get these type of opportunities. So I'm very grateful. But yeah, but I didn't
How did
like.
you get it? Was it just pure? You just applied pure luck, or
So yeah, so during the second year of my studies, I was extremely bored. Like the studies were easy enough to where I had a bunch of free time. So then, what do you do with the free time? Um, in school, I would game, but I decided that maybe it's time to try putting the my foot on the gas and seeing how much I can achieve. So I basically went to different professors, and one was like, oh yeah, what you could do is, yeah, we have this basically visualization task, and we want you to just do some different graphs. So like I basically was modifying graphs with Python, making them look different so that they look nicer in their papers. And then I was sort of like, okay, this is too easy, give me something more. And from that, all of this sort of spun out.
okay, got it. And so basically, they acknowledge that you have the capability to be even considered for a program like this, whereas most other bachelor students, even though maybe they are capable, they just didn't take the step, or they weren't hungry enough, or didn't chase the opportunity.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, exactly. I think it's not like I don't hold myself particularly gifted. I just think it was more of yeah, just
you
uh,
showed up, like
yeah,
you wanted it.
yeah, exactly. And I think anyone can do it if you just show up. I don't
Ask
think.
questions. How can I help?
Yeah.
Push for a little bit more, and good things will happen. So I get it. Academia rigid, let's stale, maybe a little bit old school, and then you're in the most exciting and novel, one of the kind of the frontier fields in science. So what do you do with that? Because there's like a disconnect, right? Because you're studying it, it's supposed to be super exciting, but then the whole framework where you are studying it slash if you would have to dedicate your life to the academic world would be pretty boring, I guess. So
Yeah, and
you go
like
work at an investment bank.
yeah, academia is slow, and just like I said, like there are a lot of people who basically got the accolades at some point, but now they're basically useless, just sitting there. So it's the
Tenure. That's what
yeah,
it's called. Yeah,
exactly,
fuck,
tenure.
man.
So I feel like there's a lot of people like that in academia, and I really disliked it. So yeah. So next step, I mean, you do get a lot of useful skills from even a study program like this. So you get like programming skills, and you get AI/ML skills, and data engineering skills. So you can apply them, and I did apply them in like a fintech company afterwards. But yeah, again, it's in fintech you have different problems. So yeah, afterwards, after 6 months, I got this offer from EF. And
Why fintech though? Wait, before we talk about EF,
why fintech? No reason in particular, honestly. Like I afterwards, I didn't really care too much what type of job I get. It was just a question of, can I even get a job with a study program like this, because you come in and you're like, what'd you study? And the other coworkers are like, oh yeah, I studied computer science. Oh yeah, I studied mathematics, maybe if he was a data scientist. And then you're like, yeah, I studied computational neuroscience. And
but as at the very beginning, you described that you are studying math and computer
yeah, yeah, yeah,
science while you're
exactly.
studying for computational
Yeah,
neuroscience.
exactly. But on your diploma, what's written is, computational neuroscience. And on other people's
Mm.
diploma, it's written, like computer science or maths.
So what would be the ideal? Like before we go back, continue with the fintech part. Like with DeepMind, the company that kind of built um the program that built like, beat the guy in China or Korea or Japan in Go. Is that like the ideal place for computational neuroscience to work at, or
No, I think it's probably, so you either go to the medical field and you work on like applied. stuff. So like maybe become, I don't know, like an MRI engineer or something, or in academia. Yeah, most stay in academia and just do more research. Because I guess like Neuralink would probably be something.
Right. Like, I wanted to ask you, like, what kind of startup can you even start, or what kind of startups are there in computational neuroscience?
Yeah, so basically anything. So I mean, for this sort of field, anything related to the brain is the obvious is the obvious path forward, but it's not the only one.
Got it. And why did you choose? Before we continue the fintech part, I'm interested because you said academia. We got the reasons. Medical field. Why not?
Mm, so for medical field, it's again a lot of studies, very hard to get in, and it's a very rigid field. I wanted to try more something more where like your performance mattered more than your accolades. So yeah,
Totally.
that's why I looked for something in the
Did you find
industry.
that in fintech, or how was it even venturing into the fintech slash just tech startup world? Right, like
Mm.
getting out of academia, you proved yourself over there. Um,
It was a learning curve for how it functions. Like you have those sprints, you have those sprint reviews, and you
so
present
who were you actually? But what was your position? And like,
data scientist.
okay, yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, you have these new topics, but at the end of the day, I mean, when it boils down to it, it's just work, and the work is pretty similar everywhere. Honestly, like I don't feel like there's if you're working like a job at a computer, the work at the end of the day doesn't differ that much, no matter what you do.
surely it does.
I I mean,
Or you mean just like sitting at a desk for like
yeah,
8 or 10 hours a
exactly.
day?
Like the feeling you get from the work won't differ that much. Like you'll still be sitting in a chair. You'll still be mostly reading, not typing.
Yikes, that's sad, man. So it doesn't matter if you're putting slides together or if you're writing some code that's gonna actually unlock a lot of value for the company, you still feel same shit.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like yeah, I feel
Personally, I get it. Like you feel like okay, like in the end of the day, you stand up, you've been sitting at your computer for hours on end, and
yeah,
like I actually wanted to ask you about data science because it's a field that hasn't it's been around for I guess a decade or two now, but um data and science, what does it even mean? I get what it means, like
yeah,
data scientists, you could try to look through different like probably massive sets of data and try to make sense out of it.
yeah.
But yeah, what is data science to you?
Yeah, so I think if we look neuroscience, the study of nervous system, so data science is the study of data, basically. That's the way I look at it. It's anywhere where there is data involved, data science is just uh, working with the data and making insights from it.
So
So
for example, like you get, I don't know, payments, I don't know the fintech that, what did the fintech do?
yeah, so the fintech worked on it was a document management system for financial institutions, so like banks and accountancy firms.
Okay, so you have hundreds or thousands of data points from your customers, from the banks, of how they
Yeah, like
interact with your
more
platform.
like tens of millions and more,
Yeah,
hundreds of millions.
a fuck ton. And so,
Yeah.
how do you know what to infer out of this data, especially as a person who's been in computational neuroscience and never probably worked at a bank or
Well, that was actually the simple part. Like the bank had very clear. So I never had to wonder uh, what can we do with the data because the goals were already pretty well defined by the time they got to me. Like, oh, we need to be able to classify these documents into different classes. Oh, we need to be able to extract the salary, so how much a person got from salary slips, or
Mm,
oh, we need to know the property value from taxation reports. So it was always very, very well defined, so that was never a problem of me trying to figure out, what sort of insights can I gain from these documents, or just how do you achieve that.
got it. And you mentioned EF. You said you did this for 6 months, right?
Yeah, around 5, 6.
And did you get bored or what happened?
Um, so I imagined the corporate world a lot more performance driven, but for
Mm,
me it was still not performance driven enough. Where you basically had like a lot of inefficiencies, where I felt like they could be improved, and I pushed a lot, and some initiatives worked, others not so much. But yeah, I decided that it's still very um, not performance driven. There were other factors, so I decided, okay, what's next? I always wanted to create a startup that was like, I don't know, just the idea of having something your own, basically, like this is my company. It's always very appealing to me,
but
and
and what? Yeah,
yeah, I decided that this path would be where performance mattered most, basically.
because
Like,
it's yours.
yeah, because it's yours, but also because at the end of the day, I don't think investors care too much about who you are, what you did. Do you have a bachelor's? Do you have a PhD? Do you have
Mm,
whatever? It's at the end of the day, like, how many customers can you attract? How well do you de-risk? How
just
quickly do
money.
you iterate? Yeah.
What ROI are you gonna bring
Yeah,
them?
exactly, exactly. So I feel like this is the area where your accolades matter the least. Obviously, they matter a bit, but at the end of the day, your accolades are basically your performance. Like, if you founded three unicorns,
Who
then
gives a shit?
obviously the investors are gonna trust you a bit more than um,
But still, you gotta deliver.
yeah,
I guess
exactly.
this academic field like put a chip on your shoulder. Like did you feel at some point over there that you were blocked because I mean maybe when you mentioned this like bachelor thing, like you were junior, you didn't like people thought you cannot live up to doing XYZ and you always felt like you're being held back.
No, yeah, yeah. I feel like that's in a lot of, like, in the reason I moved through everything was exactly because of that. Because I felt like, mm, yeah, you're being held artificially. Like, you're being stopped from moving up artificially. Like, for example, oh, you're delivering quite well, but you're only in the company for, I don't
Yeah.
know, X amount of months, so you can't move up.
Know your place.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ugh,
So
that's the
it's
worst.
so it's yeah, it's always that's very demotivating to me. Then I feel like, what's the point of even trying? And yeah, I didn't want to feel like that. I wanted to go into somewhere where it felt like no matter how much I put in, it's always worth to put in more.
Mm. That's yeah. I can totally resonate with this. It resonates with me. So what do you want to start? Because I get the motivation behind it,
Hmm.
but then what do you do?
Hmm. Yeah, so for me, currently the goal is creating a successful company. That's like number one priority. So I don't care
Define
to,
success.
yeah, find success, exactly. So I don't care too much about what type of company it is. What does it do? Do I get to use the things I did in the past, or do I need to learn new things? I don't care too much, as long as for me the path to success seems the clearest. I'm gonna go for that path, basically.
Okay, and I mean you could probably join an early stage startup, where you could build up that momentum
Hmm.
and get that nice equity package, be seen as like one of the early employees and have a little bit of leeway in terms of also career progression. But because I get it, like I get like I want to start something like whatever, just like why don't you go to an accelerator or talk to people like I don't know if Rocket would still consider something like this, but you just show up and say, hey, open up your supermarket of ideas for me. I'm gonna choose one, and I'm gonna just go all gas, no brakes. I'm just be all in and figure it out. Give me the idea. Is that what you're looking for? Because if so, like maybe open up a poll on Twitter, like, yo, what's the hardest thing I could be working on right now? Get some input and start working on it.
Mm,
Computational neuroscience, fuck man, that's a hard thing to do. Like, why don't you start something in that field?
mm, yeah, these are good questions. I don't think I have a very good answer. For me, it's so for me, this boils down to one: when you work for somebody else, you're not at the wheel. So want to see how well do I function when I'm, when I'm at the wheel, when I'm the one in control.
Mm.
So that's one thing, and the other thing is also like, being one of the founders is not as cool as being the founder. Like, I feel like there's a lot more prestige that goes into.
That's your academic side. Huh? Going
Yeah,
out of that prestige. That's what I
yeah,
want.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So I feel like, yeah, I want to try to create something myself, and obviously, if I don't have what it takes, then you look for new things. I don't.
Yeah, but actually, it's a very peculiar situation, right? Because you have the motivation, you have the skill set, you put in the program. Like right now, you're an entrepreneur first, right? And you're given also some financial backing to do whatever you want to do. Yet you can't find it. It's kind of weird.
Hmm. I mean, so you, Tony, know my story a bit in EF. I did. There were a few exciting projects, but obviously, as a first-time founder, um, you do have a big learning curve. So one with one team up, it just didn't work out. My co-founder decided that this wasn't for him at this moment, and he just quit. So that's completely fine. And then for the other one, I just did a lot of rookie mistakes, basically, where, yeah, we went into a field where we had no connections, so it was very hard identifying the problem we need to solve, basically.
Okay, first, like the first co-founder left because he just didn't like your ambition was too big, or
No, no, no. So he just had some personal issues, or personal stuff he wanted to take care of first, and decided that EF might not be for him at the moment. So he just left. And then the second one, yeah, we just went into a field where we didn't have any advantage, basically.
okay. And the rookie mistakes you made, what was that?
Yeah, so it's going into a field where you have no advantage. I think especially important is market advantage, because building
Market edge.
connections, yeah, building connections and building a network is a lot more time consuming than learning some new tech and implementing it. Obviously, if it's not I mean, for some technology, it's a long research, but usually that's not a startup case. Then you go into academia and you research something, because academia works more on things that on technology that is not yet proven that it might work. Um, so I also feel like the
Maybe that's what you need to do is like find some top tier university, like somewhere where you really feel like this would be a game changer for you, and hunker down for a couple of years, publish some papers, build up some momentum and traction. And you're also working for yourself at some point now. Like you're given a lab, maybe a few like students to help you out, and then see what happens.
Yeah, but that's a long time in the future, and obviously this opportunity presented itself like right now, because in academia, okay, let's say I go back, so it's at least 7 years.
No.
Well, yeah, so you get your master's, and then your PhD can take 4 years, five, six, seven. So it's a long time.
Okay, yeah, let's ideate a little bit then. Like, forget about it. But what do you want to even like? You probably have some things that really interest you or you're passionate about.
Hmm.
I get the like,
Yeah, for me, the main thing right now is achieving freedom. So one big thing is being free to do whatever I want, and then the so
well, you kind of are right now. You're free to do whatever the fuck you want. Like, you put in a program where I'm trying to understand, like, because it's you obviously like you're a very smart individual, and you have the right motivation, and so you can do anything. Yet you don't feel like you can, or you think like you still need that a few more zeros in your bank account,
yeah,
and
exactly.
then you would do whatever. But
Yeah, I
why?
feel well. For me, it's when you have enough zeros in your bank account, then you don't worry about those things. Like right now, for example, I don't have enough zeros in my bank account, so it's always a question of okay, if I start a venture, I need it to pay out in the next X amount of years, basically.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I get it. Uh, but why not just start working on something right now, whatever you want to do? So that same mindset as if you had the zeros, and with that you get the zeros. You know what I mean? Because also ask yourself, if you have these blockers, maybe it's worth using your data science skills.
Hmm.
Like, I bet a lot of companies would hire you. Go work there for 2 years or 3 years. Ask for like a proper salary. Save up some money. Um, and then maybe you'd be able to have this like also feeling of, okay, now I can do anything. I can, because I also think you're looking for comfort now. Because
Hmm.
like if you fail with a few more zeros in your bank account, fuck it, who cares, right? Like, you try something different. But now, like, failure just is gonna cost you way more. Therefore, there's pressure.
Hmm. Well, I did, so I never, obviously nobody likes failing, and me
Mm.
especially, I don't like it. So for me I'm more so a hardworking opportunist. So it's I don't I'm hardworking, and I always look for opportunities, but when they present themselves, I take them. So basically, like, no, when I was in academia, I was looking for opportunities, and then the opportunity
Mm.
presented to work in the lab, so I took it. And then afterwards, I looked for more opportunities, and an opportunity to work in the fintech presented itself,
I
and
can
I
relate
took
to
it.
that.
And then here as well, like, because of my past experiences, I guess EF reached out to me, and yeah, I decided that this is one of the best times for me to try and create a startup. It's a great environment, a lot of very smart people, smart, like, good ideas we could generate.
Yeah, I get it, and I'm not trying to give you shit, and I'm in a very similar situation, like you, where I also kind of once presented the opportunity, okay, all in. But sometimes you got to create the opportunity yourself, and that's because I'm treating this conversation as also maybe a little bit of like self therapy. But it's yeah, I'm curious, like, I hope you find that thing. But if not, maybe it's just worth even just looking at what people with your background, what they're working on, or like what kind of startups in like your domain, something that doesn't really make sense right now, or you don't think it's gonna generate, or like it's gonna break the bank, um, but you're really into, like, maybe you start working on that. Um,
No, I mean, there are ideas I'm into in EF, but it's so for me, it's I don't like the domain where you work. doesn't doesn't mean that much. Like, obviously working on some things is way cooler than working on other things, but at the end of the day, the coolest thing is success. Like, when you work on something and you have success in that, that's where the cool thing happens, you know? So even though Elon Musk flying rockets is way cooler than Mark Zuckerberg,
Running meta or whatever.
yeah, they're both way cooler than the guy who decided, oh, I want to work on neuroscience, but fails completely. Like, they're both way cooler. Maybe the domain of
But
the
who gives a
neuroscience.
shit? Like, why do you care so much about being cool, man?
I mean, I don't know. For me, it's so for me, the coolness factor is one of the most important things. Like, you know, that's basically why I chose neuroscience, and why I quit it as well, because it's not cool when you're, you know, working on
Mm,
on things a lot and then not getting anything in return, basically.
maybe use your data science skills to build some, I don't know, like a course on YouTube or some TikToks about like quick hacks or some like thing that you could build hype around you in terms of like being an expert in the social media space in terms around computational neuroscience, because I think looking for that coolness effect or that like glamour, like it wasn't. I don't think anyone who succeeded in life, big time,
Yeah.
was motivated by that. So, mm,
I mean, I don't know. Like, why do you think Elon Musk is focusing on flying stuff to Mars? I think it's mostly for
I
coolness.
sure fucking hope not. I mean, from what he says, it's like. I mean, also, I don't. I mean, I don't care if he. Okay, fair point. But from on paper, like,
Why did Elon Musk buy Twitter? I think it's just to be cool, basically. Like,
yeah, but he can do that, man. He's a multi-billionaire.
yeah, but
I don't think when he was starting like Zip2, he was thinking if it's gonna be cool or not. He wanted to build a business that's gonna make money
exactly,
and
and that's
and
very cool.
fuel his like other ambitions. So maybe
Yeah, you see, I'm exactly like that. I'm like, yeah, let's build a successful business first to fuel my ambitions.
mm,
Exactly. So I'm just, I
and
think this,
find an idea that's like the most the thing that's gonna most likely make you a lot of money, but it's not exciting at all. Like I don't, what could you get into right now? Like what's the thing that could make easy money for you? You have some experience in fintech. Fintech is hot. Like a lot of, they're like they're startups that you're getting like the one in London, Sequence or something. They got a 19 million seed round, right? Like you probably could figure something out, put it together, and it's not something you're super passionate about, but can make you money.
yeah, no, I mean
Might
that.
sign up.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, it's like I said, it's focusing on building a functioning business first, and then I see where it goes from there. Can I even do this? Because it's a big question of can I do this? This is a completely new venture, and in my gut, I feel like, oh yeah, I can definitely do this. But you never know until you try.
Yeah, keep trying, man. That's what I can say. I always like with your the people's different life stories to ask the indecisions and how they make decisions. And I guess your decision making was mainly driven by, um, to an extent, opportunism, but also like where can you apply yourself most? Like where can you find the most level of, um, not only challenge but also like being independent or creating that momentum for future success. Correct?
Mm, yeah, it's so how I would look at it is basically when I feel like I'm being stopped, I move somewhere else where it's where I don't feel like there are stoppers until again I feel like I'm being held back by something, and then I move on to a different thing, and I'm hoping that that way I don't get stuck in a position where, you know, you stay in the same position for an ample amount of years, and then by the end you realize, oh my god, I could have done so much more.
Mm. So it's living up to the expectation of um, just making the best out of it.
Yeah, exactly. Living life to the edge, you know, like you don't stop, and if you're being stopped, then you move around the stoppage,
Yeah. Or just blow it up like the sign or whoever's
or
in front
just
of you.
blow it up.
I don't know.
Exactly.
It's like it's at some point you're also going to be blocked and you can't just run away. It's also, I think, worth considering.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess depends. It's now that
Because
boils down to your personality, right? Some people like blowing stuff up. Some people like jumping over it. Some people like digging through. Some
okay,
people.
fair enough. But what I'm trying to say, at some point, you maybe you won't be able just to create another. It might create like a pattern where you kind of give up too easily on something, or you just switch course. Where sometimes you have to tackle things head on. That being said, what's your advice
Advice for whom?
for yourself or for people out there who are also studying computational neuroscience or people who want to build something and you've having experience in both, or just being a human on this planet? What would you say is your advice?
Don't be afraid to reach out. I feel like that was the biggest stopper for most of my years. Like, don't be afraid to reach out, and yeah, hard work. Always work hard.
100%. Don't be afraid to reach out to other people. Basically, like cold reach out.
Yeah,
Most people are willing to help.
yeah,
Just take the
exactly.
step.
Yeah, it's scary at first, but it's the most beneficial thing you can do.
Nice. And if people want to reach out to you, how can they find you?
So they can email me, um, lapienis.paulius at yahoo.com, or oh wait, I spoke in Lithuanian
yeah,
actually.
yeah.
I
I was like, what
realized.
the fuck did you just say?
Yeah, sorry, yeah. Lapienis.paulius at yahoo.com, or you can find me on Facebook or LinkedIn or
Oh yeah, I'll put it in the show notes.
uh, basically anywhere. You can find me anywhere. Just if you search for me, you'll find me.
Yeah, totally, man. Thank you so much. I had an incredible time. And yeah, good luck.
Yeah, thank you, Tony.
Cheers.